Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Mr. Lang's Vlogs. Today we're going to be talking about the Great Depression and the New Deal, basically the 1930s. So let's get started. Again, the first thing we see right here is one of the most famous photographers, Dorothea Lange, and some of the most famous pictures she's done, including The Migrant Mother, which again really encapsulates what the Great Depression was all about and how people really felt during that time. Now, a normal business cycle is, of course, going to have its peaks, its recessions, and its recovery. And that's exactly what went on during the Great Depression, and what still goes on today. But the problem is that during the Great Depression, that recession cycle actually kept going down until, as they said, it's like the bottom fell out. Now, things you need to know: the bull market is when you have an upward trend in stock prices. Again, you literally think bullhorns, upward trend. See? So now you remember. And that's again going to be towards on the recovery side versus the other type of market we have here, which is the bear market, which is think of like a bear paw coming down. This is the downward trend in stock prices. Now, the nation has a very sick economy coming into the late 1920s because they had serious problems with agriculture, railroads, textiles, steel, mining, lumber, automobiles, housing, and consumer goods, where these important industries did struggle, and none more than agriculture, because of course, agriculture after World War One slowed down. The production didn't, but the demand did, because again, we were feeding troops over in Europe and here in America. Now, we didn't need that much. So of course, the farmers are not going to be needed as much, yet they're still going to produce just as much as they did. Now, consumers also spend a lot less, and the reason why is because they have rising prices in this merchandise, and their wages didn't actually go up either. However, they were overbuying on credit. Remember this new thing, credit, we talked about before? Again, when they overbuy on credit, the biggest problem they're going to face is paying back those debts. And most people didn't have the money to buy the flood of goods coming out of those factories. So, 1928, we have Herbert Hoover. He promises a lot in his 1928 election, and of course, he wins with an overwhelming victory. Of course, we find out later on he's not that good. But still, he does win this election by a landslide. Again, many supporters. Now, by 1929, most Americans had been somewhat tied to the stock market by putting their money in. Now, it was the most visible symbol, I guess, of prosperous American economy. Now, they start even with the Dow Jones, which is still around today. That is the industrial average on which the barometer of the stock market's worth. And when the Dow is up, it's good. When the Dow is down, it is very bad. Now, stock prices rise through the 1920s. The Dow reached a huge high of 381 points, which nowadays isn't very high at all, but back then was very, very high. But including 1929, we have 4 million Americans owning stock. But this is what's going to break that bubble and make that bubble go and go and go until it finally pops. Because we have everything from speculation, where too many Americans were engaged in this, buying a stock and bonds hoping for a quick profit. Again, like I said in class, it's like as if there's a new iPhone coming out. Well, you got to go and buy it. Everyone's going to go buy it. So if you buy that stock before it rises, when everyone buys it, that stock's going to rise. If you buy it at $500 for a share, and then you go ahead and sell it when it gets to $600 of a share, just to make a quick profit because you know iPhone is going to make Apple, a lot of profit. That's called speculation. And so the biggest things too that came out as a problem is margin buying, buying on credit. Where out of that $500 to get that Apple stock, I'm going to go ahead and only pay $200 and then borrow the $300 from the bank. The problem, of course, is if that stock goes down, well, then you don't have, say it goes down to $100, well, now you don't have the $300 to pay back the bank. And a lot of people, this is what leads to a lot of people losing a lot of their money in the 1929 crash. First, it goes down October 24th on Black Thursday. The market took a dive, but it recovered Friday and Monday. But Tuesday it fell down even further on October 29th. That's when the bottom fell out. 16.4 million shares were sold that day. Prices has plummeted. Again, something that was $500 would be like $5 now. So people who had bought on margin buying were stuck with huge debts. And of course, is enough to show you just how low it went on 1929. And again, what people said, Wall Street lays an egg, and we have everybody from, Rockefeller losing 4/5 of his fortune, Vanderbilt losing 40 million. And of course, Clarence Darrow, who we talked about with the Scopes trial in the 1920s, he's going to be left penniless. The Great Depression is literally that time from 1929 to 1940, which the economy plummeted and the unemployment skyrocketed. Okay? This wasn't because of the crash, but the crash definitely helped it along a lot faster. And this financial collapse had people panicking, running to the banks to grab out their money. But the banks, they also play in the stock market too. And because they do, they didn't have that money either. So banks were forced to close. They didn't have any money. And of course, we have by 1933, 11,000 of 25,000 banks closed. Now, GNP drops as well. GNP is gross national product. It's the total output of a nation's goods and services. This falls about 50%. And again, businesses go bankrupt and unemployment rises to the highest it's ever been at 25%. That's 1/4 of the country out of work. So we put in the Hawley-Smoot tariff. We put a tariff, a huge tax, on anything that's imported. Again, trying to get people to buy American goods so we can have American jobs and get that money back into America's economy. It was meant to protect it, but then this leads to world trade falling about 40% because everybody else is doing it too. Now, causes of the Great Depression, tariffs and war debt policies. The demand was low despite factories producing more. The farm sector had a huge crisis we're going to be getting into. Everyone had easy credit, and of course the unequal distribution of income. Now, lots of hardships during this Great Depression, including Hoovervilles stopped showing up in the cities everywhere. And what that is a collection of shanty towns that are makeshift shacks made out of scrap. We even have soup kitchens that come up. This one in particular in the photo was sponsored by Al Capone. Al Capone did do that. But nevertheless, many common features of urban areas during the era was soup kitchens and bread lines. They offered low cost or free food. Minorities, the conditions for them plummeted as well, including the Dust Bowl is going to be huge. This is a severe drought that gripped the Great Plains in the early 1930s. Wind scattered the sand, the resulting dust traveled hundreds of miles, and it was literally left with farmers with nothing to grow. So they couldn't eat. Look at these dust storms. These are huge. Incredible. Buried. Now, many farmers migrated to California and the Pacific Coast states because of the Dust Bowl. And they would just pack all their things and just go. Hobos are going to travel America. They're going to travel the railroads. This is where we get even the term hobo from. And again, we have a lot of effects of the Depression. Suicide rates rose, alcoholism rose, state mental hospitals, a lot more people were admitted there. Many people did show kindness to strangers and stuff, but nevertheless, many people developed saving habits and like thriftiness. If they didn't, they were out robbing banks, because some of the most famous bank robbers of all time come out of this, including John Dillinger and, of course, Bonnie and Clyde. All right, Hoover does struggle with the Depression after the stock market crash. He tried to reassure people, and he even tries to get them to believe in rugged individualism. Again, the idea that their people succeed through their own efforts. However, even though he said pull you up by your bootstraps, it really didn't do much at all. Now he does do a successful dam project, which is originally the Boulder Dam, now called the Hoover Dam, which did give a lot of jobs and help electricity in the area. But however, it really wasn't the biggest thing. Best thing he did, but didn't help us get out of the economy. But it is still around today. It's too little, too late. Especially because he does help create the Federal Farm Board, the National Credit Organization, and the Federal Home Loan Bank. Again, to try to restructure this, but a little too little, too late, if you will. Now, the bonus army is 15,000 World War I vets arrive in Washington to support the proposed bill. One ends up happening is called the Patman Bill. This would have authorized Congress to pay a bonus to World War I vets immediately. The bonus was scheduled to be paid in 1945. The vets wanted it now. So what they're going to end up doing is they're going to go and they're going to literally storm the Capitol. And the Senate's going to vote down that bill because of their marching. But however, that's our own army. Now, 2,000 refused to leave. Hoover had to send in 1,000 soldiers under the command of General Douglas MacArthur and Dwight Eisenhower, which we're going to see in later years in World War II. They're going to go ahead and split these guys up. and Americans were shocked at the treatment of these vets. Again, MacArthur's 12th Infantry gassed like more than 1,000, including an 11-month-old baby, who ended up dying. 2 vets were shot and scores injured. I mean, Americans were outraged, and once again, Hoover's image suffered, even while it was trying to come back with the Hoover Dam. See, now with this, we are also going to have the New Deal. Once Franklin Delano Roosevelt comes to be president, what's going to happen is he's going to help fix this country. Again, the 1932 election showed that Hoover was not going to get elected again. Republicans renominated Hoover, even though there was a low approval rating. Roosevelt wins with an overwhelming victory, as you can see. Now, he promises a new deal for the American people. He took office and did a flurry of activity within the first 100 days called the 100 Days. Now, what he does is he literally gets America back to work. Congress passed more than 15 major pieces of legislation that significantly expanded the government's role in the nation's economy and welfare. Literally, he is going to help do so many things. Number one thing on his list, help banks. He says we got to reopen these banks. So he does. He also puts in the FDIC, which again ensures the account holders up to 5,000 and set strict standards for banks to follow. Nowadays, about 100,000. But now they can't lose $100,000 of their money. It's federally insured, so you wouldn't have this crisis again. And he also did other things like the AAA, which raised crop prices, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which focused on direct relief to hard-hit areas, and again helped create the more dams, more alphabet agencies, as they call them, CCCC, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps, which basically meant from ages 8 to 25 worked on building roads, parks, and planting trees. Very similar to what Obama did as well. Now, we have the PWA, which is going to also help out to construct schools and community buildings. The CWA, Civil Works Administration, going to help out with teachers. What? FHA, Federal Housing Administration, provide home loans, mortgages, repairs. Again, he's going to put through a slew of these alphabet agencies. Now, the big thing about this is the Supreme Court starts to react because they struck down the NIRA as being unconstitutional. Now, that's another group. So the court starts striking down his things. They struck down the AAA as well. So FDR regains the control of the Supreme Court. He's able to appoint 7, that's right, 7 new judges to the Supreme Court, assuring that his programs would continue to carry on. So even though there was a little bit of a roadblock, FDR took care of it and continued on. This is what they call court packing. Now, most critics, like Father Charles Coughlin, are going to, broadcast radio sermons slamming FDR, saying he is not good for the country, including Huey Long as well. He's a senator from Louisiana. And he was basically set up to run for president, so he kind of never didn't like FDR. But a lone gunman actually assassinated him, believe it or not. But FDR easily wins a second term. And when he does, he has the second New Deal. Although the economy had improved, the gains were not as great as expected. So what ends up happening is he's going to continue his work. And when he does, it's through the second 100 days, or the second New Deal. And again, he's going to put through the WPA, the Workers' Progress Administration, which is going to create as many jobs as possible. He's got to get America back to work. And so the WPA builds America. We build 850 airports, 651,000 miles of roads and streets, public buildings as well. Again, the National Youth Administration is going to get those youth back with more education, more jobs, and again, to help the youth get back to work. This is going to also improve a lot of labor relations because, of course, legislation helped protect workers, and he gave them the right to unionize. Now, Congress protects the workers, which was good, with a minimum wage, and the Social Security Act, which would help out with unemployment, old age, pension, and so on. But it does affect people. And of course, Eleanor Roosevelt is going to be his wife, very pivotal during this time as well. Alrighty, I am running out of time, but FDR wins again in 1936. And of course, we're going to get into the culture of the 1930s soon enough, okay? If there's any questions, feel free to email me. This is Mr. Lang, and I'm out. I'll see you in class.